Craig, hi, how are you?
Good, good, good. Feeling good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to be able to connect.
It's beautiful to join you and to talk about spiritual interests and certainly what is passionate in my experience.
That's so awesome. So, for people who don't know Mr. Craig Villarrubia, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with the Course in Miracles, how you came across the famous little book, and what you thought of at
Yeah.
the beginning?
Sure. Yes. I think like most people, I was looking for a deeper meaning to life and certainly a way of living in which I can experience happiness and joy. And I think for a long time I was searching for spiritual principles that um, would help me achieve what I think most people are looking for, which is to be happy. And so I've read many books, like many people. I read Eckhart Tolle books. I read the Celestine Prophecies, anything that came in front of me. And then one day in conversation with a friend, he quoted something from the Course. I didn't know it was from the Course at the time, but he did quote it. And the quote he said is, "There's no order of difficulty in miracles." In other words, it's just as easy to cure a cold than it is to move a mountain. And so that quote stuck with me. And I had asked him where he got that quote from. And he told me it was a book called A Course in Miracles. And shortly after that, it may have even been that week or the day after, but I remember it was shortly after that, I was in a bookstore and there was this blue book that stood out and it was on the bottom shelf. And I say it's on the bottom shelf because typically our eyes aren't drawn to the bottom shelf, but in this case my eyes were. And sure enough, there was A Course in Miracles. So there was no question in my mind that in that moment I was going to buy that book. And the title, A Course in Miracles, I thought was so fascinating. This idea that I was going to learn how to create miracles. So that sold it. And then I brought the book home and I immediately started to read it. And and it was very difficult for me to read. And so after purchasing it, I thought it was the worst $40 I had spent in that moment because I spent so much time reading it and I could not understand one thing that I read in that book. But it took me, it took probably a few years before the book would resurface in my experience. It traveled with me and I had it in the house. And I tried many times, but it would be Marianne Williamson who would re-inspire me to look at the Course again and help me understand some of the terminology or look at the terminology in a way that I can now find value interpreting and getting what I needed to get out of the Course. But it was very difficult in the beginning for many years.
Same experience, and mine's a little bit similar. I studied complementary and alternative medicine, and that book was part of the curriculum that we had to go through. I had never heard of it ever, and it was a 3-year program. And I procrastinated, and I loved everything else. I loved all the other topics. I did not understand a word that book said. I, I was like, I no. And I think about the end of the 3rd year, I said, okay, I have to finish this curriculum. And the same thing happened to me. I didn't connect with it until I read A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. Then I
Mm.
kind of saw it from a human, different level, talking. And then I was able to go back into it and, oh, that's what they're talking about. And then I started. That's so
It's
fascinating.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. So, when was this that you came across the book?
So I probably came across the book in the early 2000s.
Okay.
And then I probably got really into the Course in like 2007-ish, 2006-ish. I started to make more of an investment in trying to kind of understand or learn the Course. I think a lot of students oftentimes, do that in the beginning is this deep desire to try to understand what's in it. And then once things started to click, then there was a deep passion for what the Course was saying. And there was a deep desire to also share the insights that I was coming into. And so that eventually turned into a desire to like speak about the course and share on YouTube and create a website and so forth.
Okay, awesome. So, okay, I'm thinking of something that you said at the beginning. You said you found that the name Course in Miracles was so fascinating. I'm going to pick your brain on that for a minute because I mean, I think we're taught that a miracle is something that comes with bells and whistles and angels singing in the choir. And it could, I'm not going to say it's not, it could, and there are instances that it feels like that. But I think a lot of people that I've talked to and they see the name, they're like, what, are you going to teach you how to create a miracle? Like, what is that about? So from your point of view, what's a miracle based on your point of view of the Course of Miracles and just your experience? Because I think miracle is a heavy defined word maybe in our society.
Yeah, that's a good point, because what attracted me to the course was this idea that I can somehow influence the the world, or influence the form, as the course uses the word form. And so for me, that meant, whether it be creating more wealth, maybe that meant creating a healing, maybe that meant creating a certain situation that I wanted. Um, you can think along the times of, manifesting. And so that is a very attractive thing, this idea that we can influence, or kind of create the life as we want it to be. And so A Course in Miracles, that title is very attractive. And that is the idea in my mind that I thought the Course would provide. And as you had mentioned, or what I think you were leading to, is that that's really not what the Course means when it talks about A Course in Miracles.
Right.
But it uses that title, and I think a lot of people are brought into the course with believing the same thing that I believed. It's almost like the course kind of brings you in, and you know, different people may have different definitions for a miracle. But what I think the course is helping us with, and my interpretation of what a miracle is simply this: when we are suffering, or when we are experiencing pain, and when we are in our deepest hurt, what we want in that moment is relief. We want peace of mind. We want joy back. We want happiness back. We are trained to think that peace of mind, happiness, relief will come as a result of changing circumstances in the world. What the Course allows us to do, what the Course is training our mind to do, is to have the experience of peace in the midst, or during our deepest suffering. So there's almost a switch from an experience of deep fear to love. And so that switch, or that perception shift, that relief, is the miracle. And that is what we want. Oftentimes we get confused with what we want. We think we know what we want, and we say, okay, you know what? I can't pay the rent, and what I need right now is $1,000 or whatever it is. And there's nothing wrong with that desire for $1,000, but the reality with the capital R is that we can still experience peace despite what the world is showing us, that the rent is due, or that something we think is going to happen is horrible, or we're dealing with the illness. So the course is really helping us train our mind to experience the true nature of our being, which is peace, joy, and happiness, regardless of what's happening in form, or regardless of what's happening in our perception. So a miracle is simply a shift in perception, and that shift in perception comes with a recognition of who we truly are, beyond the experience of a body, or beyond this idea that who I am is this flesh and this blood. In fact, what the Course teaches is that I am spirit. I am one with spirit, who's not subject to suffering, that's not subject to whatever's happening in the world, regardless of what's happening in the world. And so the experience of peace comes as a result of being able to be witness to everything in the world, but not be affected by it in a way that we're suffering. So to me, that's if I can be happy, that's all I care about. Regardless of what's going on in the world, and we know that to be true. We know there are times where there are people who are happy regardless of their marital status, regardless of their financial status, regardless of their disease. I mean, there's people who seemingly suffer these diseases that can be happier than someone who seems to have everything. So what is that about? And I think the Course gives us a lot to think about and look at to help us understand really how the mind works.
And I love that you said that, because there's a lot of times that people think, oh, this is spiritual, oh, this is whatever. I'm more focused on my bills, and I'm more focused on the quote unquote reality of what the heck is going on around me right now. I don't have time for this. And it's when we learn to look at it that it's working your way from inside out and seeing and understanding we are spiritual beings, which, just as you said, made out of pure happiness, joy, and love. We forget that while we're living in the day to day. And I think at least for me, part of the Course, or the majority of the Course, always reminds me of kind of, one, connecting to that part that I always disconnect from when I enter my crazy mind and life, or two, it's really to experience the joy, the true joy of being here with whatever is now, and being able to deal with it at such a, okay, everything's going to work out. Just like that person with the horrible disease. I mean, they accept they have a disease, they deal with it, but they're not thrown under the bus and sit there. They have that aliveness in them. And I think that's what the Course really brings about. I mean, I'm totally game on that point. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's fascinating. And speaking of that, so okay, talk to me about your viewpoint of healing. Healing from the Course perspective, and I'll say this: when somebody's physically hurting, when somebody's physically ill with something, again, if they're connected and they're in joy and they can see it from a different point, awesome. Sadly, not everybody's like that. But I know that the Course defines the body and everything that's going through the body and how they can heal. Can you explain that in like low and simple terms? Because that's a complicated one for a lot of people that need the healing or want the healing, but can't wrap their heads around that one.
Yeah. So at the deepest level, the Course would teach us that we are perfect extensions of God. So if we are perfect extensions of God, and that means we share in God's attribute. In other words, we share in His all powerfulness. We share in His eternal joy. We also share in His invulnerability. You can't hurt God. God cannot be offended. God cannot be sick. So we share in all of those qualities. And so if it is that we are experiencing something different, like an illness, like a depression or something, it must be that we experience that because we're seeing something that isn't there. And so now that's easier to understand intellectually, but like last week I had a cold. And so there were moments where I was like, I wouldn't say necessarily in pain, but certainly I couldn't breathe. I had like a sore throat. So then the question is, well, I thought you were an extension of God. What happened? Well, yes, we are an extension of God, but in this experience, there's also a very powerful, or not powerful, but there seems to be something that's happening in this experience where we've confused ourselves to be, again, this body. And so in this dream, if you will, it's got a tight hold of our mind. And so when a cold comes up or something that's painful comes up, the Course is not saying to deny it. So it's not like I can pretend that, oh yeah, I'm not suffering from all these ailments and stuff like that. It's really about being present with what's coming up, to the point where I'm not judging it. So yes, I was sick, and yes, those things were coming up, but I don't have to make it a bad thing in each moment. I don't have to focus all of my attention in how victimized I am by the cold. It's a cold, it happens. A Course in Miracles says forgiveness is to watch without judgment. And that is the Course's central teaching, is forgiveness. So how can I experience the cold, which is part of life, by the way,
Right.
in a way that I watch it without judgment? So that means I'm not complaining about it at work. I'm not, freaking out about it. Thinking it's something else. I'm not entertaining a thought system that says somehow I'm victim to the cold. And you probably know this. You probably know people. There are people who can get a cold, and oh my God, you would think that they were in their deathbed. And then you see people who get a cold and they work right through it. It's not even, they don't even realize it. So there's a way of experiencing what we call pain differently, dependent upon how we perceive it. And that's what this is about. When we talk about A Course in Miracles and it being a mind training course, it's about training the mind to see things in a way that you're not at the effect of them, or you're not suffering because of them. So you get a cold and it happens, but you can still have a cold and you can still laugh and you can still participate in life, and you can still be in appreciation. I'm appreciative of, the way the body reminds me to relax. The cold was, for me, it was a message to kind of take it easy. And I did. And I caught up on a lot of shows that I would not have caught up on had I not stayed in bed and done all the things that I needed to do.
Well, it's looking at the positive without freaking out, is probably the way I would say it. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of people, and obviously I always make the claim I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to heal. I don't do anything of that. But a lot of my clients, my coaching clients, come to me because they're sad or they're depressed. And it's okay. Let's see what got you there. And then let's look at all the other great things that you're not looking at. Because our mind focuses, and you just said it, this is a program that kind of refocuses and reprograms your mind. Our mind is meant to focus on particular things, but it's our decision what we focus on. And I think with the Course in Miracles, you consciously decide, do you want to make your decisions and your focus based on love and happiness and joy and positive, or do you want to focus your decisions based on anything that's freaking you out, aka fear? Because anything that's not one, it's the other. So I talk a lot of, like, very simply to the coaching people that I have, and or just in normal conversations with friends. And I'll mention something of A Course in Miracles that'll come up, or I tell them, check this out, or check some other spiritual thing out, or whatever it is. And later they come back to me, and thankfully they're like, I got it. I was going down that path and I was stuck. Like, they don't see a way out. And I think A Course in Miracles for me does that. It shows me that there's another way. It shows me there's another way to ask for help, see forgiveness, and go back to precisely the happiness that we all want.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What about spiritual awakening? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people can have spiritual awakening in many different ways. Um, I'm not one to vote for a particular religion or not, or a particular philosophy or not. And I love comparing them. I love comparing different philosophies and religions. But when we talk about spiritual awakening, what do you refer to as that precisely?
So I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle a long time ago, and I remember he used this analogy of, if I remember correctly, he talked about different levels of truth, and what he was talking about, or the example he used was, on one level, if I was to ask somebody, are sunsets and sunrises, are they real? In all likelihood, they would say, yes. You look at my own iPhone. I just recorded a time lapse of the sunset. Yes, sunsets are real. But if you go to the moon and you're looking down at the earth, well, sunsets aren't real in the sense that the sun really never sets and it never really rises. And in fact, the sun is not even doing anything. It is the earth that is spinning and rotating around the sun. So on one level, it's true, yeah, there's sunsets, but at a deeper level, really, there's no sunset. So when you think about that, you can also understand that there's a widened perspective. In other words, when you think from that perspective, you are open to a greater understanding. So, in my view, that is what spiritual awakening is. It is going from what you thought was true to a deeper perspective of life, and that is the work we do. And so with the Course in Miracles, what it's doing as we do the mind training is it's expanding our awareness of how life really works. And so that is all awakening is. It is awakening, it is widening our perspective or understanding of the truth of who we are. And that can come in many different ways. Certainly, Course in Miracles, its aim is to create a means or offer a means in which we can facilitate this widening of our perspective or our spiritual awakening. But certainly, like you mentioned, it can come in many ways. Certainly devotion, meditation, even defining moments. How many people, they're in a car accident and then all of a sudden they wake up and they have this defining moment that just kind of, propels their spiritual awakening, or their widens their perspective of their life and what they're doing and so forth. So spiritual awakening can come up in different forms. I think the more open we are to it, the more willing we're able to say, I don't know. Mm-hmm. The more willing we're able to accept that, we are not in charge, then we are shown, because of that willingness, and the Course talks a lot about willingness being an important component to awakening. As long as we're willing, then we will be, life itself will show itself to us. And I think for me, that is definitely true, that, the more I'm humbled, the more I am taught by the world, by God, by the universe, of what's really going on. So to me, spiritual awakening is simply that. It is the perspective just widening, and it can come in experiences too. I think when we have an open mind and when we are our hearts are open, we also are open to experiences of spiritual awakening. So I know for me, in my experience, there have been many times where I've had these heart openings or these moments of complete bliss. Mm-hmm. And those become like the evidence of truth, and the evidence that this trajectory or this desire or this spiritual quest is real for me, is through those spiritual experiences. So, and then they come in many shapes, different forms for everybody. And the goal isn't to have necessarily a spiritual experience. The goal is simply just to be open to it, and it will come as it is called for.
Awesome. I mean, I think you described it awesome. For me, it's I mean, what I said at the beginning. There's so many different things, and it's the experience of going through things that really open you up. And I think A Course in Miracles for me reminds me of the spirituality versus my mind running like a crazy toddler all over the place, because it happens. Yeah. So I want to ask you before we wrap up, for people who are already like us going through it, fine. But for people who are beginning the Course in Miracles, or they're interested because of this series, or they had heard about it, or they've seen the book and they're kind of not wanting to go there, and they're risking, okay, fine, I'll try it. What quick advice would you give them, totally a beginner, to deal with beginning this?
Yeah, I would say be patient with the material. And really utilize all the resources that are online, because there's so many teachers, fabulous teachers. Much of what has helped me is videos like this, teachers who've put out their their teachings on social media, all of it. There's some really, great people out there, and I would leverage that opportunity to help, because it's going to be needed.
Yeah, definitely. We had one of the other videos, one of the teachers talking, and the first thing she said was, get a teacher, get a mentor, get a friend, somebody who's been through it, and it'll help you understand it, because the concepts sometimes are easy, quote unquote, and sometimes they're not what you thought they were. And it's only until somebody really sits down and says, let's look at this part or see it this way, that precisely that spiritual awakening happens, because it comes in at a deeper level and isn't just knowledge, because this isn't meant for logic. And I think that's why I'm so focused on wanting people that are beginning to not give up, because my book sat there for 3 years and I had to start it for my program, and I waited till the last minute. And when I finally got it, I was like, I could have done it 3 years ago and felt good, but you don't know until you try it.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's kind of my thing. If they want to reach out to you, if anybody's interested in reaching out to you or seeing more of your videos, learning more, talking to you, how can they best get in touch with you?
Yes. So first of all, I'm on social media on Facebook. So Craig Villarrubia on Facebook, you'll find me. I have a website also, craigvillarrubia.com, and I do have a YouTube channel. I used to be very active on all my social media accounts. I'm not as active, but there's some really good content on all those channels. And when I am inspired, when I do accept invitations like this, they end up on social media and on the web. So I encourage everybody to check out my YouTube channel, website, or Facebook. And
Okay.
I'm on Instagram too.
One more.
There you
We'll
go.
put all the links and just send me the handles, and I'll put them here where we put the video so that everybody can share and see it.
Awesome. And also, it just came to mind, I will be speaking in the UK for the ACIM conference in Solihull, UK. And then I'll be at the ACIM conference speaking at the Boston event. And that is coming up the last weekend of May 2019.
Perfect. Perfect timing. Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Craig, for meeting us, talking with us. It was fun. Um, Thank you for accepting the invitation now that I know that you're not on social media as much and I happened to catch you.
Awesome. It's been a joy. Thank you so much. And thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.